Tom was around the set quite a bit. He was hanging around, and I asked him specifically about, you know, was he aware of the effect that Fred was having on him. You know, Tom was going through, I guess, you know, anything that a man goes through, you know, family and health and work and career. He wasn't the happiest guy on the planet. But in the course of doing his job, he came smack dab, face up against Fred Rogers, who were saying things like, "You're really special, you know. You have a lot of gifts, and you work hard at what you do. And you know, you don't have to do anything to make me like you. I'm liking you fine." And I'm sure the jaded member of the Fourth Estate in Tom's mind would say, "What's this guy hiding? Why is he snowing me on this thing?" And he was just being Fred Rogers. He came out very specifically back to me with a perspective of the power of the force of Mr. Rogers as opposed to the plot that goes on. I said, okay, whoa. I get that. That I understand. And I hadn't seen the documentary yet, hadn't done anything like that. I just knew that she was coming at this this is the red dot of what this movie is, and that is the chosen power of empathy. I have played real guys before, people who actually existed. And sometimes I've spent a lot of time with the actual guys I played. Jim Lovell, Sully Sullenberger, Charlie Wilson. And all the time you say, look, you know, I'm going to say things you didn't do and say things you didn't say and do things you didn't do. But beyond that, I want to be as accurate as possible. The added burden of, if I can be so bold, as Mr. Rogers, because it was not just the expectations of the man himself, but the expectations of everybody else about Mr. Rogers. I think he's one of those people that, for Fred, actually turned into a broader human experience. And I've seen the letters that they wrote back and forth to each other long after that. I saw a lot of correspondence that he would keep up. And he and Tom Junod, they kept in touch about everything that was possibly, you know, under the sun, which is, again, Lloyd, in our movie, expanded Fred's world. And he was grateful for just how special a gift that is. Fred was literally one of the people who loved Lloyd into existence. In our movie, that's what happens. And Lloyd is so much, he's a better everything. He's a better son, he's a better father, he's a better husband, he's a better journalist, he's a better friend, all because a guy who had no reason to do so said, you know, you're very special. You know, and I think you're great, just exactly as you are.
It's a very needful film right now. I think everybody that I've read or talked to, they want it tomorrow, you know? And I couldn't be more delighted. He looks adorable as Fred. He looks wonderful. And he is just the nicest person you could ever want to meet. And I hear that from everybody, but that's my own experience with him. It's a fabulous tribute to Fred. And I'm so happy about that. I can't tell you. One of the most wonderful things about this film is that Tom Hanks will be playing Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers was a huge fan of Tom Hanks.
We were doing this hero story, this hero's issue, and somebody at the magazine thought it would be really kind of funny having me, you know, this, you know, kind of hotshot, sort of badass guy doing a story on Fred Rogers. And so it was intended as like this juxtaposition of good, Fred, and bad, me. You know, a role that I was definitely willing to step into and willing to play at the time. And, I mean, in the movie, he's not happy that he gets this story. In real life, I was fairly pleased because I thought that, well, this is my chance to sort of, not just explore goodness, but to see, all of that which lurks behind it. Fred saw me, sized me up, and, went to work, which is, I mean, that is where the movie and where the script is very, very true to life. I mean, Fred, he had that amazing gift of looking at a person and seeing what that person needed, and that he was going to minister to that person. And that person in this particular case was me. And I look back on it now and realize, how purposeful Fred was and how kind of relentless he was in doing that. Coming here to the set and watching Tom as Fred, that was the first thing that really, really hit me yesterday was, oh my God, Fred's gone, but this is as close to I'm going to get to ever being, with him again. And it was a powerful moment. It reminded me of, this man who at the time took a chance on me. His spoken message is simple, but the message of his life is not simple, because the message of his life is goodness in action, goodness enacted. And I think that if the movie captures that, and the difficulty of that, and the worth of that, and the aspirational worth of that, hey, maybe we should all aspire to be a little better.
I love that he's not doing an imitation of Mr. Rogers, but really, he's done the research and it all lives there. So you hear Mr. Rogers, but you also know there's a new life being breathed through it, and there's space for that, and there's room for that, which is a lovely, beautiful thing. You can't really recreate a person, there are people who do imitations for that, but there is something about bringing a humanity to a role and bringing new life and new breath into something, while very much reminding us of that very person, which I think he does really well. Matthew brings this quiet intensity, I've learned with him, to the roles, that there's really, you can see him thinking through a lot and tracking the journey of his character a lot. And even now, watching him sort of work this green screen moment, and all of us are off camera and stuff, but you can see that he has it, he's visualized it all in his head. He's gone through the motions and the emotions and knows fully where his character is in these moments. So it's easy to trust him when I work with him. She's exciting to work with and calming at the same time. She definitely keeps a sense of peace on the set, a sense of encouragement and trust. And that's, I don't know how much more you can ask for in a director, really. There's so much love for him here. Shooting in Pittsburgh has been really cool, because you get the feeling of what inspired him, maybe. This is where he's from, and being able to shoot at the actual studio where he shot, all those things help. It's the vibe, getting the feeling of something helps so much as an actor.
Just this beloved figure. For so many of us who grew up in the 70s or the 80s or 90s, he just represented good in the world in so many ways. And the thing that he does for children that I think I now as a parent relate to so much is he actually listens to children and tries to give voice to their feelings and lets their experience be valid. Tom and I talked a lot in the months leading up to shooting about Fred's voice and about his mannerisms. And I think the trickiest thing for Tom was sort of to just slow himself down. We never wanted it to be like he was doing an SNL impersonation. We never wanted it to feel like a skit. So we knew it was always going to have Tom Hanks in there. But Tom Hanks is a really charming guy. He walks into a room, you know he's there, he's chatting with everyone, he's greeting everyone, he's got like a booming loud voice, he's really present, but he never lets an awkward moment happen. He doesn't, he'll always fill it and tell a joke and make everyone feel comfortable, which Fred wasn't like that. Fred was quiet. Fred was very comfortable with silence, or whether he was comfortable or not, he allowed for a lot of silence. He didn't really mind if he was making you uncomfortable. And he kind of just stared at you, and he didn't also move a lot. And like, I can just feel myself as I'm sitting here gesticulating all the time. Tom's the same way. He gesticulates, he moves his body, he shifts around. Fred kind of found his position and kind of kept it. And if you watch him in interviews, he's really still. So that was sort of the biggest challenge, honestly, was just tapping into like this different energy. There was this sort of weird duality happening on set all the time where the real people were meeting our version of those people, or even I think Joanne Rogers hanging out with Tom Hanks when he was dressed as her husband. I think there was, for them, it was probably so surreal. For them, it probably felt like a weird dream where they were stepping back in time and going up to a funhouse mirror and looking at themselves. But for us, it was all about wanting to make sure they felt like we were doing them right and doing them proud. And over and over again, people said to me that they were so touched by how much we cared and how respectful they felt like we were being, and that we really got it right. My hope with this film was always that this isn't about telling the story of Mr. Rogers or telling a biopic or letting you know some interesting sordid detail about his life. I hope that people take a moment to reflect on themselves and their own emotional self and their own emotional well-being, and get to reflect on their humanity through watching the movie, which is a bigger challenge to the audience than I think people maybe will be expecting.
I don't think there was a choice in Tom being Fred. He was kind of born to play Fred. Is that he brings so many qualities that I think, as a mass audience, people feel about Tom Hanks. It has the same feeling that Fred Rogers elicits in people. There's an incredible, when you say, oh, I'm doing a film with Tom Hanks, people will always smile, you know, and in a very warm way. And when you talk to the people, good people of Pittsburgh, not even Pittsburgh, of the United States of America, and you say Fred Rogers, it's the same smile. So the marriage of the two, of Tom playing Fred, couldn't have been written in a book, because it's perfect. I think Lloyd has prided himself on the fact that he is a very hard-edged investigative journalist whose pursuit of truth trumps, for lack of a better term, everything. So I think he feels very justified in the ways and the means by which he goes after that truth, and whether or not that's relatively vitriolic or angry or violent, in not physically. He thinks it's absolutely justified if it's in the pursuit of truth. So I think after maybe a few experiences of this, his editors very wisely said, look, we're gonna segue you to something a little nicer. You are to write a piece about Mr. Rogers, to which Lloyd balks at the hilarity, and which sets us on the course for this film. One aspect of Fred that I saw is that he has his ability for empathy was enormous. And I think because what he could do immediately to any person with any kind of problem or any human condition, be it happiness or despair, was relate to it. Therefore, his empathy for it was kind of limitless. And I think what he sees in Lloyd, sometimes, not to the same degree, but he sees elements of himself in Lloyd. And what he does is, whereas Lloyd can't see it or recognize it, he can see it and recognize it. But also, he also knows what can be done in order to advance yourself. So I think there are moments, maybe to, as I said, smaller degrees, Fred sees elements of himself in Lloyd, which is why he can go, I know what this is, and this is how you can overcome it or work through it. What he's done with the part kind of blew me away, because I hadn't realized how transformational he is as an actor. He's kind of stunning to watch.
Fred's philosophy was about love and kindness and respect, and those things never die. You know, that what he really was about is true human values, and that he believes in the goodness of all of us, really, and that's what he wanted to try and get across in the program. I just love the idea that it's being taped in the studio, that you all recreated the whole thing, and it's just very touching. I mean, I think that when I go to the set, I'll probably start to cry. What I hope when people walk out of this movie is that everybody realizes how important they are, and that you affect everybody you meet in some way, that they take away part of you when you part ways. Whatever you do for them, they remember it somewhere in their heart.
I thought it was very beautiful, and I thought it demonstrated also just through one story, a simple relationship, one story with Fred Rogers and the journalist, how he profoundly affected and changed his life. And then the end, in a way you realize, and all the pictures he took, that he would always take a photograph of people he was interacting with or dealing with, and realizing that, well, then you can multiply this one story by how many more stories. She's a remarkable woman. So for me to have the opportunity to try to portray her, and not doing an imitation at all, because she's unique, and just the fire in her, the joy of life that comes out of her is pretty rare, and it's quite a thrill for me to be able to approach that. We need this now. Kindness, someone who talks about kindness, about saying, I like you just the way you are. We are together. We can do this together. And it's not schmaltzy. It's not pompous piety or anything like that. It's purely human. And that's what affected me. And I thought, I'm so lucky to be in this world now, to have this.
I think people are looking for what's real. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for people who really care about them or care about others. They're looking for that genuine spirit of, I'm your friend. You are my friend. And they want to see that genuineness last over a period of time, not just while the lights are on or while the cameras are on. And I think what they're seeing in Fred is that it was consistent. We would always say, what you see is what you get. What you saw on television is what you saw when the camera was off. There was no difference between that person. He is one of the warmest people you'd ever want to meet. It's hard to believe that it's Tom Hanks when you're standing there talking with him. I mean, it's really hard to believe that this is Tom Hanks. This is somebody you've seen in how many movies, and how many roles, and how many TV programs, and how many interviews. He really, like Fred, focuses on the person he's talking with. That's what's important to him. So I think there are a lot of qualities that Fred had as a person that Tom Hanks has as a person. I hope it shows more than Fred. It shows how important relationships are, how important people are to us. One of the things that I always picked up from Fred is Fred would do these visits to a factory, and everybody would say, oh, we love your factory visits. Fred would always respond, I'm glad you like when we show how people make things. Because to Fred, it was always about people. And if we don't have real, genuine friends and people in our lives, what else do we have? And I think that's what this shows, that this relationship between these two men helped both of them. And they both grew as a result.
I love the fact that 50 years later, we're still celebrating what Fred stood for in terms of the children that he respected. And he was one of the first people professionally to use that term with children, respecting children's feelings, respecting children, listening to children. I saw photos from the previous art director of the neighborhood of the set that they're building for this movie, of the Mr. Rogers home and the sets that they used. And I think they are fabulous looking just in photos. And the art director said to me it brought her to tears. It was such a good job. She said usually in movies they cut corners, and in this one they didn't at all. It looks exactly like Fred's set. I think the audience will see another dimension of Fred, the depth of how he worked with people and supported people that he knew. And these were not stories that were widely publicized. These were just people that Fred helped along the way. There were so many. And I think it's going to be interesting to see one in-depth example of that support that he provided.
Everything he's done, he still has actor integrity. Still on time, he's still off camera, he knows his lines. He's not about anything other than the baby. And to see someone like that still carry that and be the actor, despite everything else that's distracting him, he's still the actor. There's no one better to play a man like Fred Rogers. I felt completely safe. Not only her skill level, but her perception of things and how detailed and nuanced and really just she comes from a classical filmmaking impulse. This film really reminds us that here's a man whose message was simple and beautiful, but we've become so jaded to mistrust it, to not believe it. How could this be true? And I think that's really, really important to share right now, because that message is beautiful and simple, and it is the truth.
He's got so many of the same beautiful qualities and empathy and kindness and a gentleness about him that it's easy to understand why he was approached. He has a great sensitivity for this kind of subject, I think. Wonderful thing is she's allowed me to really develop this character. Fred Rogers has exemplified anything but rudeness, and we need the empathy, we need the kindness, we need the forgiveness, I think folks will feel really good walking out of the theater.
Who better to play Mr. Rogers than Tom Hanks? I thought that the minute I heard about it. But also just for me, walking in, I do not hang out with Tom Hanks on, my everyday life. And I was a little bit nervous coming into the hair and makeup trailer the first day, a couple weeks ago. And he just said, "Oh, we've been waiting for you." So that to me is, again, kindness. There's a lot of kindness on this set and in this film. Marielle Heller is such a solid director because she lets you feel like you're making your own choices, but she truly knows exactly what she wants. So I at least feel very safe with her. She is very much in control, but she has a very gentle hand. Today, when I walked on to the set, I started to cry. It really was, it was moving to see the trolley and the tree and the clock. I really did have a moment. It's something, it really is. They're so kind, and I think they're so appreciative because Mari and everybody, Arjun, the costume designer, has taken such care, and the set design is so beautiful. Like, there's nothing casual about this production. Everything is taken really seriously and with great respect for who and what we are reenacting or portraying.
He had something really sophisticated to say, and he had something really important to say, and he had something really moving to say. And that, to me, I thought was just absolutely genius about the screenplay. So then you start to do the deep dive into Fred, and I started coming to Pittsburgh and meeting with the people who worked with Fred and visiting the archives, and you learn about this incredible philosophy of Fred's that every living being has value. Every living being has purpose, and that if you treat the world, if you listen with an attitude of kindness to other people, if you listen to yourself with kindness, that the world can be a better place, you can be a happier person, and that love and kindness can prevail in the world. And that, to me, is amazing. And when you take that, what seems like a very simple idea and a very basic idea, and you start to look at the tentacles of how that idea plays out in the world, it is truly radical and transformational. When Tom came to write this story about him, as happened with so many people, Tom was deeply touched by him, and it became this profound experience in his life that wasn't just an assignment. And what he ended up writing was a piece that was as much about, maybe more about himself than it was about Fred. But in so doing, he really did write about Fred, because that was Fred's life work, was to make you figure out who you are. Tom, over the course of his career, has built up an empathy with the audience, has built up a trust with the audience, has built up an adoration from the audience that is built upon the same kind of sincerity and authenticity that Fred had. Fred was disarmingly sincere as you watch footage of him. And Tom has a similar thing. So whereas most actors have to erase themselves and lose themselves into the role, or would have to into the role of Fred, Tom can bring a lot of himself to this one, and that's why that was iconic, perfect casting.
He puts the cardigan on and he starts talking to you, and you believe that it's Fred. You see Tom in there, but that's great, because I think Tom is when you think of Tom Hanks, you think of kindness, and you think of him being a really good guy, and I think that helps us, and I think that you can bring those two things together, so that even if you see Tom in Fred and Fred in Tom, as those things develop in our movie, I think it's going to be really powerful. I've obviously watched a lot of Fred Rogers, and you watch a certain amount of Tom Hanks, and then you meet Tom, and Tom is he's on, you know, he's firing fast, and Fred was fast. He was a fast thinker. He was not a fast talker, and he really, again, would let you do the talking. And so what I've found is what's been interesting is to see Tom sort of take that on. And when he lets that air make its way into his performance, it really becomes really powerful and transformative, I find. The outpouring of love that's come in little bits and pieces when we've shown pictures of Tom be Fred, or there's been a release about something that we're doing, or just the people knowing about this project, so many different walks of life have gotten behind the idea of what it is that this is. And I'm just excited to get it out into the world and have people react to it, because I do feel like it's a very universal story, and I feel like...
I think Tom Hanks was always our first choice. He is the most ideal for the role. He is America's neighbor. He's so beloved, and, you know, in casting Fred, you can't cast anyone who has any skeletons in their closet. You can't cast an actor that is cynical in any way, shape, or form. And that's a very hard thing to find. I think Tom Hanks embodies all of the wonderful qualities that Fred embodied, and it really did begin and end there. And the truth is, if we didn't get Tom, I'm not quite sure where we would have gone from there, so I'm very happy that we did. I was really struck with the amount of time and care and the kinds of questions that Tom asked Joanne about Fred. really moved me and all of us, and gave us obviously incredible confidence in the fact that he really was the right person for this role. I think she's amazing. She knows exactly what she wants. She's incredibly sure of herself. She knows this script inside and out, every element of it. But what I'm really struck with is how amazingly she works with the actors. It's almost like watching theater. It's really incredible to see her process, working with each individual actor, working through the characters, through their arc, through their journey, from small moments to big moments, and just guide them through that process. But also, she trusts her actors so much and gives them the confidence to find the role and find the character.
When you look at Fred Rogers, there's one thing about him you cannot escape, very unique to him, and that is his eyebrows. So, and when I found out that we weren't going to be using prosthetic pieces, I was very excited about that, because Tom really does look like Fred. They resemble each other in a very interesting way. And Fred Rogers has this, the eyebrows, as I said, and the hair, but he also has this very smooth skin and very smooth, mellifluous way of speaking. But in terms of the look, I thought, oh, I could do that. I could do that with paint, and of course Tom can do that with his own skin. I think that there are scenes that are very, very real. I think that oftentimes people have things that they haven't said that they wish they have said. And when you see those beautiful scenes with Fred Rogers, that people will take that opportunity maybe and do it in their own lives, have the courage to say what they didn't say, or have the courage to forgive themselves and forgive others.
It's been so incredible to recreate that set. Just bringing Fred's world to life has been magical. I mean, I used to watch this show as a kid, and we knew we had to get it right. But we knew that this was the first thing we would attack. As soon as we started prep with my team, that was the #1 thing, because the pictures are there, the research is there. There's a wealth of information here in Pittsburgh. The Latrobe Center has so much stuff, and it's incredible. Cataloged, it's like insane. So we knew we just had to go in and find every bit of information, scan everything, and just get started immediately. So we knew the things that we would have to build, recreate, fabricate. It's been such a dream to work with Mari. Honestly, I unfortunately don't get to work with that many female directors. I hope that's changing. I think now that's changing. And it was so amazing when I got this project, and then to see that at the helm of it was this amazing director that whose work I've seen and love. I was a really big fan of Diary of a Teenage Girl. And we spoke on the phone, and her energy, her passion, her intelligence for the material, she's really just she's the whole package. A movie like this, I hope that people watch this and just remind themselves of the humanity, and just to love your neighbor. I mean, right? Just that's what it's about. It's just love your neighbor and try to always keep an open mind and just have empathy for people around you. So that is my hope.
Everybody, I think, assumed that, oh, these sets are just all set up in one stage and you just flip from one side to the other. That was not the case. As we found out, the neighborhood of make-believe is something that goes up first, it gets struck, and then Fred's house set comes in. So our first task was to recreate these things. The Senator John Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh has some of the pieces. For the house set, they only actually had one wall. That's the wall where Fred walks in, Mr. Rogers walks in and says hello. So from that was the only thing we had that was scaled. So from that, and from watching television programs, watching many episodes of the show, and also some of the photos that were available, we had to recreate that whole set. It's actually been one of the great honors of my life. I mean, I think, the world seems so chaotic right now, and everyone is in disagreement about so much stuff, and it seems like civility's gone out the window. And to just be reminded of what Mr. Rogers was all about, who Fred Rogers was, that's been especially powerful for me. And so getting up every day to work on this movie has not been like the typical experience. It's been like a mission to just do the best that I can do. And I know that this entire crew feels the same way. It's really, really special.
Mr. Rogers' cardigans, I believe initially the early cardigans were knit for him by his mother. And so we thought it was really important to have them hand knit. And I found somebody in New York who works in the theater who is a hand knitter, and we had those cardigans recreated the way she would have knit them, the same way. I hope people want to be nicer to other people. I think that's why we're making this movie. I think it's been an experience where everyone has been overly kind to each other, and we're trying to spread the word of kindness and happiness and joy. And I hope that people see it and feel like there is hope for goodness in the world and empathy.
I think there are two things that are happening about Fred Rogers these days. One is that people they're bringing respect for him, and secondly, they're bringing affection. There is a real warmth about what he was doing that I think helps all of us understand who we are and who we are to other people, whether it's the people in our family or the people that we come in contact with. You know, we are all neighbors. What I understand about Tom Hanks is he is very thorough about knowing who he's playing. And that's what I've heard from the people around here, that he really wanted to understand who Fred was. Not just a shallow shell, but what was this man really like? Help me know him. And I mean, that's something we all appreciate. I think there are a couple of things that I hope people take away from this. One is that what's important in childhood stays with us, and we work through all our lives. And the tools that we develop in childhood can help us even as adults. I hope people will also realize that Fred was not giving magic answers or magic words, that it takes a while to go through a process of dealing with things. That's what I feel is so true about the movie. And the other side is that sense, if it can help bring more of that respect and affection for who Fred really was, I think that helps all of us.